care of some business.
Huh?
I said you had to take care of some business.
Yeah. Get some money, honey.
Yeah. I'm here for the money, not the honey. Good thing the microphone's on.
Yeah. So, get closer to the mic.
Okay, like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
You always back up.
Yeah. I have this habit of thinking my voice projects. But I think with a microphone it doesn't work quite like that. Okay, let me get all of it.
There's nothing better than a Yanomami shaman song.
Yeah.
Because you know that they're doing everything they can to fight against the people that are coming in to try and take over the Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. I see all kinds of horror stories about how much of it's getting chopped down and
Yeah,
you
this
know?
is the lungs of the planet.
yeah, and it's getting cut down for cattle. You know?
A very invasive species.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're poisonous. You know, they ruin the land.
So I'm very happy that all the tribes are getting bison back.
I didn't know that. But I got a funny story about we were going through Yellowstone and we seen a huge bison.
Okay. There's nothing stronger than a Yanomami shaman song. They're in the fight of their lives to protect the lungs of the planet. So I always like to remind people that our words, our songs, our music of protection, our music of prayer, and music of connection to the earth and all the beings on it.
Oh.
Yeah. So, again, Jason, tell me a little bit about your thoughts when you heard the apology. Because he actually did it in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure where, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in Arizona. I mean, my thoughts were just like, my first thought was like, do you know what it's like to grow up in a family where, where people have been experienced that boarding school trauma, and does he understand the impact that's had on our community? The loss of language, the loss of culture, and how that's trickled down to the children and the grandchildren of the people who experience that. Like, I don't think he gets it, I don't think he gets it. And for me, it really hit close to home because, I was really blessed and fortunate to be able to go to a school called Hintel Kuka in Oakland, which was started, from what I understand, by veterans of the Alcatraz takeover.
It was actually started on Alcatraz.
So at this school, when I was a kid, there was hundreds of us, young Native kids who went to this school. And our community is based on our parents and grandparents who went to boarding school. And so without getting too much in depth, you can look, when I was a kid, I could look around at my peers and you could see we were struggling. We were struggling with stuff that is has a lot to do with intergenerational trauma from the boarding schools. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of us who are gone, who have fallen victim to the streets, violence, substance abuse, that's directly related to the trauma of the boarding school experience. You know, a lot of the boarding school experience back then, you know, my grandparents' generation, that's when boarding school was like abusive, super abusive. And to be taken away from your family when you're a child, raised by people who don't love you, who are being abusive, and never being allowed to go home, like being reared and grown up in that fashion, and then dumped in the inner city. And see, the thing with intergenerational trauma, it's passed on from generation to generation. So that same, a lot of that same stuff was passed down from generation to generation. And for us here in the Bay Area, like, it's just, you could see the impact, you know, you could see the impact, you know, you can see it in where we live, you can see it in the struggles and adversity that we had to overcome. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into detail about certain things, but myself, having gone to Hintel, and anybody else who out there who went to Hintel and is listening to this, can understand what I'm talking about. Like we were some young Native kids who were struggling, but there's a beautiful side to it too, though. We were taught a lot of activism. Mm-hmm. You know, we were taught to stand up for ourselves as Native American people, to stand up for our culture, to stand up for our beliefs. I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, we had something take place where there was a group of us Native kids in the same class, and we refused to get up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And they asked us why, and we didn't totally have we were in the 3rd grade, like I was like 9 years old or 10 years old or something. I didn't have a clear answer. I said, because my parents told me I don't have to. Why? Because I'm Indian. I don't have to. You know, and you know, at 9 years old, that was the best I could muster. But you know, it was because of the activist influence that we had from our parents and our teachers. You know, it was very much understood that you know, it was all right for us to be proud to be Native. You know, that's what we were taught at Hintel. You know, and at Hintel, you know, we started there. You know, you start there when you're in nursery school, mm-hmm. and you leave in the 6th grade. So all the people that I met at Hintel, I've known since I was knee high, you know, and we all go way back. And those are the kind of bonds and friendship and family and relations that never break. You know, we see each other to this day. You know, I'm in my 40s now. I see them to this day, and it's like seeing your brothers and sisters. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our community here in the Bay Area, is how close we are, how interlocked we are, how like we all that love that we have for each other, and what it's based on, how far back it goes. It's not happenstance, it's not coincidence, it's not something we made up. You know, our parents go back together. Our parents knew each other. Our grandparents knew each other when they came here on relocation. So those bonds run deep. And that's why we're such a close-knit community here. I've lived in other places, but I always come back here. You know, like my family's originally from Arizona, and I consider that my home, but this is my home too. These are my people too. And we're an intertribal community. Like I've lived lots of places. I went to high school on the res in Arizona. I lived in Kayenta. I lived on Black Mesa, Chochimbito, Blue Gap, Tuba City. Like I was sent all over the place, you know. I lived, and then when I came back, I was back for like a couple months, and then at 18, I took off to South Dakota. I lived out in South Dakota for, 4 years or so. When I was a young man, I started my family out there. So, I mean, I've lived in other places, and there's been times where I thought I'd stay out there, and I was never going back to California, but I always come back. You know, I remember there was an elder in our community. She's like, "Yeah, I knew you'd be back. We all always come back." But you know, you were talking.
There's something pretty special about the Bay Area.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that some of it is the feeling of activism that doesn't exist in a lot of other places. Because we learned during the time that Alcatraz was happening, it was also the time of the Civil Rights Act, it was also the time of the anti-Vietnam War protests, the anti-draft protests, the anti-militarism. There was a lot of things going on, and people were not just, you know, doing American Indian activism, but the ethnic studies programs were starting. The very beginning of the ethnic studies programs here in the Bay Area was where it birthed. And Richard Oakes and several other people were part of that. And also, it was a very, very powerful place with Intertribal Friendship House, with the Native American Health Center, and with the American Indian Center on Valencia Street. There was a way to gather, a way to bring people together. And I think one of the beautiful things is that the artistry, the collective artistry of the children of the relocated people has been amazing. Their ability to design clothing, their ability to design murals and all kinds of things that are you know, now coming to full fruition. But if you look at Tommy Orange, you know, his 2 books that he's written about our community, you know, he's an Oakland kid, you know, and Julian Noisecat, I mean, his articles in the newspaper, his editorials have been amazing. And I got to see Sugarcane as one of the first documentaries at a film festival out at the Presidio. And so it was, and I also, this is really beautiful, but when we were planning to do a paddle to Alcatraz for the 50th anniversary of the occupation of Alcatraz, Julian and several other people went back to where they were hosting the paddle journey. And I can't even remember whether it was Puyallup or one of those tribes up there. But I got to dance with Julian and his father in the ceremony to invite people to paddle to Alcatraz for the 50th anniversary.
That's awesome.
So I got to personally meet Julian and his father. And it's one of the things that I felt was so strong and powerful about that documentary was how respectfully they treated everybody's ideas about religion. The Sweat Lodge was treated respectfully, even the members of the Catholic Church in the little community, because there's people that were baptized in those boarding schools and became very faithful Catholics, you know, because that's what's happening with indoctrination. So I thought it was done very respectfully. I thought that the apology of the Pope was similar to the apology by Biden, because neither one of them really understood. And a lot of people in America don't understand when we talk about boarding schools. In Canada, they call it residential schools, which might be a little bit better, because a lot of Americans think boarding schools is for the elite You know, the people that are going to be ruling class or
Yeah.
something like that. And that's not what we're talking about
No.
at all. So it's probably better to do it's like the first one was called the American Indian Industrial School, because they were training us to be homemakers or farmers or whatever, carpenters or welders, anything but the elite.
Yeah. Yeah, I give Julian Noisecat his props for that. And on the same note, I want to shout out my nephew Chani Heredia, for being in Resball,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's big. So shout out Chani. And then you were talking earlier too about the artistry that came out of the activist community and mindset that exists here in the Bay Area. I have a good friend named Gabe Patton who designed the shirt that I'm wearing right now. It says the town of revolution. The town meaning Oakland, and it's got the different symbols of the different movements that were birthed there. You got the American, well, maybe not birth, but very active.
Yeah.
You got the American Indian movement. You got the Welga bird for the United Farm Workers, the Black Panthers, and the Chicano Power movement. So, he's a lifetime member of our community as well, and you see it. You see the activism, the revolutionary mindset, in his art.
I think that's also part of this radio station. Because this radio station is Poor People's Radio Inc. And KPOO is the radio station that uplifts the voices of the oppressed. And they have from the get-go, because there was the Third World Liberation Front as part of the Black Student Union's student strike. So it was like everybody was together. There were, the Chicano movements, the anti-war movements, all of them were together during the student strike. And it was the media collective of the Third World Liberation Front that took over the station in, I think it was 1974. And we have been doing programming that Chata Gutierrez on Saturdays for years and years and years was on KPOO. And we've got reggae shows, we've got all kinds of shows for all kinds of issues, prison radio. And so being a part of the activism that comes out of a radio station is amazing.
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about the Bay Area is that sense of activism, and that's in the mindset of, not just with our native people, but with like everybody you meet out here, all the different communities, all the different ethnicities, like everyone's got that activist mindset. That's what makes the Bay Area special and unique is, we're all down for the cause, I haven't seen that anywhere else that I've been, that makes me feel at home here, that I can speak on activism, I can speak on revolutionary ideas, I can speak on being proud of my culture and practicing my culture and practicing my spirituality and trying to learn my language and all those things, which you might get some pushback if you go somewhere else. You go somewhere out in the Midwest and you start talking all this, activism and revolutionary stuff and native stuff. You might get some pushback out there. Shoot, all you got to do is go outside the Bay Area, maybe as far as over the Caldecott Tunnel. You got people standing on the you go over there, they got people standing on the overpass, with their right wing banners and slogans and stuff. You see that right here on Interstate 80 in some places.
You're listening to KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM, and we're in the middle of talking about activism. Wasn't it just yesterday that they closed down the Golden Gate Bridge? in support of the folks of Gaza?
I seen something about an occupation taking place yesterday on social media.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I live out in the suburbs now, so I'm not up on everything that goes on here in San Francisco all the time. If it happened in Oakland, I might get a phone call, but I'm not up on everything that goes on in San Francisco. It's kind of interesting, like you were talking earlier about how, we've been relocated here this is as far west as they could push us. They've been pushing us west, for 200 years or 300, 500 years. And you can't go any further west than the ocean. And now we're in a situation where we've gone all the way west. Now we're turned around and started heading back east, Where I live at in Contra Costa County, it's almost like a fledgling native community that's starting to evolve there, It's a lot of folks who I see who lived in Oakland or San Francisco or Richmond who, for whatever reason, they're priced out now, or, the owner is selling the house for $1 million or whatnot. We're relocating east, There's quite a few of us out there in Pittsburgh and Antioch and Concord, out in that area, Brentwood, Oakley, that came from Oakland and San Francisco and Richmond. And, there's a lot of people who have moved as far as Sacramento, Stockton. There's people who are moving back home to the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very beautiful thing when we make a decision and as an action move back home. I think it's important to remember that as much as we love it here, this isn't our ancestral home. I know for me, one day I'd like to live on my own people's land in Arizona. Maybe not right on top of Black Mesa, but somewhere in the vicinity,
yeah,
And, I listened to my grandparents talk a lot when I was young, and I always hear my grandma talking about how one day the goal is for us to move home. And then when I go back and I visit my relatives in Arizona, it's like they're waiting for us to come home. We have coming home ceremonies. We had a coming home ceremony where we went home in spirit, but we haven't actually physically gone home yet. It's in the works. It's part of our family's plans and goals. Some of us have gone back for a while. I went back for high school. I have an auntie who went back for a number of years. And, it's there. Our people are waiting for us to come home. They think about us. Even though we're out here and it seems like we're doing great, a lot of us are struggling, and we have family back home who love us and think about us and pray for us. Pray for us. I think that's very powerful, is our people praying in our traditional ways, our traditional ceremonies, in our traditional languages. Most of my family back home is fluent in Diné, Navajo. I was more fluent back then in high school because, for a number of reasons. One, I used to hitchhike a lot. So when you hitchhike out on the res, a lot of times you get picked up by them older guys,
mm-hmm.
and they want to conversate, and they speak Navajo. And so you had to get conversational in Navajo, learn it real quick if you wanted to be a successful hitchhiker. And then, the closest gas station's 40 miles away, so you want that soda and them hot chips, he's like, you better learn some Navajo real quick. And then I used to work at the flea market in Kayenta. My auntie had a concession stand. So some of my relatives that would come and help out with that only spoke Navajo. So in order for me to, understand how to do things right, I had to learn some Navajo back then. And then I was taking orders in Navajo at the concession stand. And I love the food out there. It's so different from when you go to a powwow out here. You go to the flea market out there, you have 20, 30 vendors selling all different types of Navajo foods, roast mutton, fry bread or dry bread, which is tortillas, all different kinds of stew. You got multiple kinds of mutton stew. You got like rib, roast mutton, a cheat combos. Like, the food is just amazing out there, and it's so different. And a lot of us, like Navajo people out here, we'll get together and we talk about, like we yearn for our culture. We yearn for our language, our songs, our foods, the stuff that we experience when we go home. We don't quite have that established very strongly here, but I think it's coming. I think you have people like my good friend Kelly Roanhorse. She's an entrepreneur. She's out there selling her jewelry and her arts and crafts and products that a lot of it comes from Arizona, back where we all come from.
I love her beadwork, and I love the fact that every once in a while she'll do something with using a logo from a sports team.
Yeah. I love the fact that she sells bluebird flour.
Oh yeah.
Because I know fry bread is not the healthiest thing to eat, and I don't advocate eating it every day, but once in a while it's great, and if you're gonna make fry bread, maybe this is just a Navajo-centric way of thinking, but we consider bluebird to be the best flour for making bread, period, bar none. So yeah, I'm glad to see her selling that bluebird flour. All I can say to people out there is, if you got some empty bags of bluebird flour, I'll take them off your hands. I need to get those made into some shirts and put them on my pants and whatnot. The logo is valuable. The bag itself is worth something. Yeah.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I think with entrepreneurship, a lot of this stuff is coming back around. You have a lot of different tribes, I was just at the powwow. I got some sisters who set up every year at the CRC powwow, and they make some beautiful stuff. My auntie makes some beautiful jewelry. My mom makes the best fry bread. My grandma, she makes all kinds of good stuff. She made me this beautiful quilt when I was young that just, I kept it for 15 years till it fell apart.
Well, yeah, of course. And it's the same way. I have some quilts my grandmother made. I don't use them because I want to keep them as long as I can.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the boarding school thing, I think with the loss of a lot of our languages and cultures, I think I see forming in the very near future language classes, not just for my tribe, not just for Navajo people, but for multiple tribes. The resources are out there, the books are out there, YouTube videos are out there. Most of our stuff can be learned, can be picked up online just to get started. And we have people back home. Nowadays you got Zoom. We can link up with our people back home and start to put together language classes so that we can regain a lot of what we lost through this boarding school experience, relocation experience, assimilation experience that we're going through. I see that happening in the very near future. I've been talking with some of my close friends about doing native language classes, establishing a native language program, not just to learn our languages, but also to learn what we're saying when we sing a lot of these songs. A lot of these songs, we learn them, we get our pronunciation down, we know in a general sense, what we're singing and what we're saying, but I feel like there's a need for us to dive deeper into what these words mean. What are the intentions? What are we missing?
Yeah.
And I have a good friend named Reuben Crowfeather. You know, we were talking about this the other day, and I think we're gonna put something together. I'd like to see something take place out in my neck of the woods in East Contra Costa County. I'd like to see something get put together and take place in Oakland. I'd like to see one taking place here in San Francisco, each one tailored to the community that lives here and in the other places that I just mentioned.
A bunch of Dene people living in San Francisco.
Man, you got a bunch of Dene people living everywhere. Like I said, everywhere you go, there's a Navajo. That's what they say. Everywhere you go, there's a Navajo, Jeanette.
Yes. So, the other thing that's interesting is that there are a certain number of people that live off the reservations. Almost 2/3 of American Indian people live off the reservations due to relocation, economic issues, the wars, the military service, a lot of stuff. People moved off the reservations and didn't want to go back because there was nothing there for them. Although they always went back to visit.
Yeah.
Everybody goes back to visit the grandparents and, the land. But when you live in California and the Yurok Nation is the largest numerically California Indian tribe. And I think that they have maybe less than 10,000 people. There are 27,000 Cherokee Nation citizens that live in California, which is much larger than any of the tribal people in California.
You guys need a chapter house.
We have one. What we call them are at-large communities. And every year there's a CNO, Cherokee Nation organizations that gather together on an annual basis, and every at-large community in all kinds of different states or all over the world sends representative back to the nation to, find out from the chief what's going on this year and what the new things are being planned for. And just recently we won a lawsuit against the people that were doing opioid production, the pharmaceuticals. And so that money that we won from the lawsuit is going into wellness and recovery. And it's also being spread out to the nation, the at-large communities outside of the nation itself. So it's really interesting because it's not just that we're only focused on the borders of the reservation, but we're also focused on where our citizens are located. And I think that makes us stronger.
Yeah, I think out here in California we need that support. It's getting harder and harder to stay in California. It's really expensive, and it's hard to find a good job where you can afford to live here. Like for myself, I'm in the trades. I'm a union journeyman carpenter. So fortunately, I'm part of a trade union that I can afford to still live here. But that's not the case for everybody. And a lot of times, you have to know how to navigate that process to get into one of these unions. There's lots of different ones. I'm starting a construction company called Pyramid Builders. I'm paying homage to my Mexican side, my Mexican indigenous roots. I've always been fascinated with the Mayan pyramids. Like what I like to say on the job site is like, 1,000 years ago, we'd be building pyramids right now. And what I love about the pyramids is that they're so in tune with the stars and the sun and the seasons. Like, we can't replicate those kind of structures nowadays. But the Mayans, they built some amazing structures that go way deeper than what we think of nowadays. Like, I was fortunate enough to be schooled by a Mayan elder about what were the functions of some of these pyramids that that we don't really, a lot of people don't know about nowadays. But yeah, my company is called Pyramid Builders LLC. You know, I'm doing this because, you know, I want to help my people. You know, I want to be able to help out my family. I want to be able to help out my brothers and sisters who, you know, need a good paying job. You know, I'm tired of being paid only a small amount of what I'm truly worth. You know, I'm not gonna settle for just a slice of the pie anymore. I want the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to spread the love amongst my community, you know?
So that's, a couple of years ago, I got to go back to Oklahoma to the Cherokee Nation, and they were using some of the casino funds and some of the federal funds for building a medical center. Mm-hmm. And they built it from the ground up, and they made arrangements with every single union to hire Cherokee citizens to be on a crew, so that after they trained as window people, you know, people who put the windows up into skyscrapers, mm-hmm. or people that put down the flooring, mm-hmm. or people that were construction workers that built the building as a whole. They had a crew every single year of students who would learn as apprentices on the job for 2 years. And every single union that worked on the building had to train a crew of Cherokee citizens. Mm-hmm. So not only did we get this beautiful medical center built, and it's gorgeous, but we trained the young people in a trade, and after 2 years of apprenticeship, they could be hired as union workers anywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. Iron workers, you know, just every different group had a small cohort of apprentices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing when we have organizations and tribes who write into the contract, mm-hmm. Specific hiring requirements for our community, so that the money that they're spending on these projects will actually trickle down and benefit their people in a meaningful way, you know? Because a lot of times, if you can just get your foot in the door with one of the trade unions, you know, you might have got on that project as a, you know, an Oakland resident or San Francisco resident, or an Indian preference hire or whatnot. But once you're in, you're in. And then after that project's over, you can go, if you're in the union, then you can go to any union job. And if you take your craft seriously and you become good at what you do, you'll stay busy. You know, you'll stay busy with the union, you'll stay busy with side work. You're just a useful person to the community. You know, when you have elders or you have families that are struggling and they need repairs done, you know, you have the skill set to step in and be like, okay, well, you know, I can help you out with this, I can help you out with that, and help out our people in that way too.
Yeah, plumbers,
you know,
electricians.
Yeah, it's not always about the money. You know, I heard a good friend of mine talking about the karmatic value of being able to help out people in the community with your,
as in
with
karma addict?
Yeah,
karma?
Karmatic. I think that's the way he said it. Karmatic effect.
Yeah.
That sounds like an invented word. Karmatic. But yeah, you know, I think it's we have a spirit of entrepreneurship in our people. I think you see it in the vendors and the people who are starting businesses in the community. And I think that you know, we have a lot of hustle here in the Bay Area. You know, we have a lot of pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and get out there and get it done type of mentality, which I think it comes from, well, one, you know, our people have always worked hard to survive, you know. We're a strong people. You know, it's in our DNA to overcome adversity, you know, to go out there and make something out of nothing, you know, to go out there empty-handed and come back, you know, with a deer or an elk or shoot a buffalo. You know, we have that in us, you know, and I think especially here in this Bay Area, you know, you have a lot of that hustle mentality, you know, that we, you know, when we grow up in the inner city, it attaches to us, you know, we soak it up and we get gamed up on these things, and you know, that's, you know, we can recognize each other everywhere we go. You know, like I have a good friend, Robin Lopez. You know, he just became the mayor of Albany a couple weeks ago. You know, he's a young Mexicano brother from Richmond. You know, but he's very proud of his indigenous roots as a Purepecha and Nahuatl Mexican ancestry. You know, so I went to his inauguration a couple weeks ago, and you know, I was honored to be able to offer a prayer and a song. And I think it's the first time something like that had taken place in the Albany City Hall. And you know, you just see people kind of like achieving these amazing things. And you know, I want to see more of that. You know, it's like that's how we heal from this intergenerational trauma and this boarding school experience and all the things that we've been through. You know, just the trauma of what you know, all that we've lost living here in the inner city. You know, losing our peers to substance abuse and death and prison and car accidents and all this stuff that takes place. You know, it's we can overcome that through achieving our goals and our dreams, you know. And, you know, that's what, you know, and back to the Biden apology, that's why it rubbed me the wrong way. I just don't think he understands the impact that, you know, this experience has had on our community, how it's shaped our community. And, you know, and he really does have it in his hands right now to do something meaningful and put action to these words, you know. I think if he really felt that way, you know, he should free Leonard Peltier. He should grant clemency to Leonard Peltier.
One of your Dene compatriots was at Air Force One, flying with Biden back to Arizona when he was going to do the apology, and he said exactly that. Mm-hmm. He said, "You should free Leonard Peltier."
Yeah, I mean, it's been long enough, you know. I think when you look at the inconsistencies in his case, the withheld evidence, the hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that were withheld in his trial, the ballistics report.
There were 4 people that were charged with aiding and abetting in the killing of the 2 FBI agents, and 3 of them were released due to government malfeasance in the trial. Mm. If Leonard had been with them, he too would have been free for all this time. But they took him to a different jurisdiction, and they packed the jury with anti-Indian folks, and learned from that trial what not to say. So, you know, it's very frustrating, and he's very ill, and at this point, I think a compassionate leave or pardon or whatever, so that he can go home and be with his grandchildren, you know, would be really, really the right thing to do.
I think it's about time. You know, I think if it was anybody else in any other case, you know, you got people being freed on technicalities all the time. You got people being cut loose from life sentences all the time. You know, I think that, you know, there really is, it exposes kind of a deep sense in the federal government of the idea that they're still against us. You know, I've had certain friends, you know, tell me that, you know, when you enter certain parts of the federal system, you know, there's still a very much an anti-Indian sentiment that goes all the way back to resentment of Custer and his men getting wiped out at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there's still a resentment against Indian people that goes all the way back to that. So when you interact with certain federal systems, you know, you're gonna face a backlash because of it. And it's the federal government that's got their hands on Leonard Peltier. And I feel like it exposes their anti-Indian sentiment. You know, they still see it as a us against them. And that's why we still resist. You know, that's why we still have to fight for our existence, being who we are. Like even at the inauguration of my bro a couple weeks ago, there were certain people who did not want a native prayer and Sundance song to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to make sure that we had the legal freedom to do what we naturally do every time we get together, which is to start off with a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how we get down as a people. And it made me want to speak a little louder, to sing a little louder from my heart with more passion. It made me want to resist in that fashion. So we still see it.
The other thing is that very, very few people nowadays learn history.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a way of seeing news as history. But in 1978 was the first time we were allowed as American Indian people to practice our own religion.
Mm-hmm.
The American Indian Religious Freedom Act was not passed until 1978.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that long ago.
No, that's 2 years before I was born.
Yeah. And this radio station started, and we were talking about Wounded Knee, because it was in 1973,
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing ghost dance songs, they were doing sweat lodges, they were doing sun dances, they were doing a lot of stuff at Wounded Knee during the Wounded Knee occupation, and it was still illegal to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason why they felt like they could surround the village with tanks and weapons, and because that's the thing, Alcatraz happened in the middle of a media hub. San Francisco, the Bay Area, there's lots and lots of media here. Wounded Knee, South Dakota is very difficult for the media to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't covering it. They were just depending on the Associated Press from South Dakota, the governmental agencies were sending how, they were being threatened, and so they surrounded them with weapons and tanks and shootouts and stuff like that. And it was a whole different thing than the occupation of Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no media right there to see what actually was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So they could get away with surrounding people with tanks.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that happened with Standing Rock. There was only one hill that was capable of sending and receiving signals. for getting news out. So it was very difficult to cover Standing Rock. It was not until thousands and thousands of people were there. So one of the dangers is that right now, they are thinking about doing a pipeline right next to the most sacred place in South Dakota, Pipestone Quarry. And if you are anywhere close to any kind of Lakota religion and philosophy, if you've learned anything about the Sioux Nation's religion, you know that the White Buffalo Calf woman brought them the ceremony of the sacred pipe. And it's one of the most sacred ceremonies there is. It's not a peace pipe. You know, this is a ceremonial pipe where people do swear on it.
The Chanupa.
That Chanupa. So they don't want violence around the pipestone. How could you possibly have any sacred carvings made when you have anger and bitterness and you know, nastiness in the air? You want that to be sacred and holy and a place of prayer and a place that, you know, so they're very careful. The people that are calling for support are saying, if you come to help us with the struggles to prevent this pipeline from going right by our most sacred site, you have to come in a good way. You have to come realizing that your mind has to be in a holy space, because this is a very, very special place. When you make a pipe out of the pipestone, you're making something that has to be done in a prayerful way. Just carving the stone in the first place, you do it with prayer, you do it with ceremony, you can't do it when you're angry, you can't do it when you're bitter. You have to do it, you know, with forgiveness and gratitude and joy. So it's gonna be different than Standing Rock, but, you know, we're also calling people to be aware that this is happening and to send your prayers of protection to Pipestone.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't aware that was taking place. And then all the info about the mindset you should have when you're preparing the stone for your Chanupa. Thank you for sharing that as well.
Well, my late roommate, Paul Onzasaber, used to make pipes. So I'm very aware of what he did to prepare before he even touched the stone itself to start the carving. He had to be in the right mindset.
Yeah, and I was blessed to meet Paul Onzasaber a couple times. I'd see him around in the community.
Yeah, sometimes he could be rough.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all? You know, it's funny, that's one of the things we talk about, like, you know, like sometimes people, I feel like, romanticize our culture a little bit, you know? They think everything's
it's all
just,
holy and
it's
magical.
all blessings and smudging.
Yes,
and
I am a holy man.
Yeah.
I can tell you and give you an Indian name.
But like, it's like little things like that kind of like crack me up, like teasing each other, you know, like when we go back home, like, man, like at least with my relatives, man, like they'll tease the heck out of you, you know, and they tease rough, you know what I mean? They really go at it with you, and then the humor, you know, sitting around, like, you know, telling wild stories, and it's even more funny when it comes from one of the elders too. You know, the elders will tell some hilarious jokes, just out of the blue, you know. I was fortunate enough to spend time with a lot of my family out there. You know, my grandma Nellie's got like 10, 15 siblings that live out there around Black Mesa, mostly on Black Mesa. And I got to hang out with most of them when I lived out there. So for all of you who know my grandma Nellie, there's like 10 or 15 more of her back in Arizona.
Yeah.
So, and if you know my grandma, you know she's a real tell it like it is kind of lady. You know, she's got no problem getting up there and telling you exactly what she thinks and how she thinks about it. You know, very, very stern, Twitter-cheating woman. You know, yeah. I was talking to one of her. I think it was her niece who came out here a couple weeks ago, and she was like, "How'd you know we were Twitter cheating?" I said, "Because you're just mean." But you know, I was just teasing her, you know. But yeah, you know, we like to tease each other.
Gotta give it back.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I love jokes,
mhm.
you know, but I really love the old Cherokee jokes that take an hour to tell.
Mm.
You know, it's like, because we had more time back then, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a lot of time when you're out there on the res, you know. Yeah.
So let's go to a bit more music. This is, I think, this is from Tribal Choirs, and it's contemporary Native American music. And this one is Jerry Alfred, the Pelly song. And it comes from Canada, which is where Julian's father is from and where their reservation school was.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that.
the young co-director, the woman co-director of
Mhm.
Julian's documentary, is a Canadian documentarian, and she'd travel all over the world to do documentaries in you know, Gaza and in all kinds of different countries that were Afghanistan and all kinds of dangerous places. And then she says, "I'm Canadian. I better do a documentary on this issue in Canada."
You know what I think would be a great idea? I think it would be a great idea to have like a film screening of sugarcane.
Yeah.
At a place where, you know, like either like the Intertribal Friendship House in Oakland, where you have a lot of Native people on a consistent basis, or even at the Friendship House here in San Francisco, you know, where you have a lot of people who are healing from the effects of this intergenerational trauma, and have a screening and let our people get up and talk about what this brings up for them, you know, what their experience is with it, and let them get it off their chest, you know, so that we can start to have more healing from this, you know, because it has been super impactful on our community. You know, it really shaped who we are as a community. It's really what we overcame as a people here in the Bay Area, you know, and, you know, like little events like that, I think go a long way, you know, when someone can get up and share what's really painting them in their heart, you know, and watching a film like that might bring up different things for different people. I think it'd be a great thing to be a part of, you know, like a film screening with just some Q&A and an open mic and let some healing take place, you know, in our community. I think that'd be great.
It's the kind of documentary that can be healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful and so respectful. Cecilia Million also was taking a class at San Francisco State in cultural anthropology, and she was able to do a film of her family. Her father was in a boarding school, and what she filmed was, he never talked about his boarding school experiences. What she filmed was all of the brothers and sisters and his wife, and their response to his being unable to talk about his boarding school experiences. It was really powerful as well. So those, I got to watch them fairly close in time. And I realized that those are both the kind of things that we need to be able to share with one another and be able to have a talking circle afterwards. They're very strong, they're very powerful, they're very painful to watch, both of them. I mean, can you imagine being thrown out with the trash? A baby found in the trash.
Yeah.
Ah.
That's horrible.
You know, so, yeah, we need to talk about it because that's part of the trauma, that's part of why we react the way we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard from some of the elders, you know, some really rough stories of how they came up. You know, I heard from one about how he had, you know, at birth, you know, they were going through such rough times back then, you know, his community, like he, you know, this isn't at the boarding schools, but this just happened where he lived at. You know, he was left by a well, you know, and then a little girl came along and found him, and when she took him home, her parents were like, well, if you bring him home, then you have to take care of him. So he got raised by this little girl who he called his sister, you know, and yeah, eventually he got taken away to boarding school. But I think what that shows is that he'd been overcoming adversity since the day he was born. And, you know, to overcome that and to come out here and become successful working and a successful craftsman and own his own home and, you know, raise a family, you know, raise all his grandkids under the same roof, you know, it's, you know, they don't make, you know, sometimes I feel like we don't make people like that anymore these days, you know. I really admired this man, you know, or even another elder, you know, she was telling me about how, you know, as a young girl, she was being trained by her grandpa to be a medicine woman, you know, and till one day her biological father came riding up on a horse, and this was in the horse and wagon days, you know, at least where she was from. Her dad came up riding and had a grudge with the grandpa and shot him, and he rolled off into the bushes, disappeared, and they never found his body, you know, because he was a medicine man. And her and all her sisters seen this with their own eyes, you know, and not more than, you know, a couple weeks later, you know, here comes the government snatching up all the kids and sending them off to boarding school. So, you know, I think for our people, you know, it's like, you know, we've been experiencing this trauma since the Indian War days, you know, since the Long Walk, since the Wounded Knee Massacre, the Sand Creek Massacre, the Trail of Tears, you know, it's like been a non-stop struggle since our contact with colonizers, and it's been going on for a lot longer. And I think that, you know, a simple apology doesn't.
You're right, it doesn't. However, you know, our people are resilient, and I remember Bill Wapipaw and Chad Smith and a whole bunch of other people getting together and saying, you know, there are 17 anti-Indian bills in front of Congress. This is 1978, 17. And we have to do something. What can we do? So let's reverse the Trail of Tears. Let's go from the West Coast back to Washington, D.C. And let's walk to all the reservations between Alcatraz and Washington DC and pick up petitions against these 17 bills. And so they started the longest walk on Alcatraz, February of 1978. And they walked from Alcatraz back to San Francisco and then over and through the country. At different reservations, they pick up petitions and gathering stuff. And they walked all the way to Washington DC on the longest walk. And that was the first longest walk. They did it again in different countries as well. They were in Germany when the Berlin Wall came down. They were in Japan for the 75th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so people have been reversing the anti-Indian feelings by doing on the ground walking activism. It's been amazing because you're connected to the earth, your feet are planted in the earth. And we here at KPOO was able to follow the longest walk. At every week we would talk about where they were going to be next week, and how people could send socks or shoes or money or whatever to buy food or whatever, all along the way. So, you know, we're part of that, turning it around.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, you know, and especially the whole part about taking it back to the federal government, you know, like to Washington DC, like that's where the message needs to be taken, you know, and hopefully, you know, if, you know, President Joe Biden by any chance is listening in regards to Leonard Peltier, I would just say, Joe, let him go. Joe, let him go. It's as simple as that.
So let's play this Pelly song from Canada.
Want me to close out with the Sundance song?
Sure.
Well, when we get to that time, you know better the rhythm of the how it goes than I do. But when it's time, you just cue me and I'll jam one out.
All right.
I think that would be a powerful way to close it out. Wow, 2 hours is a long time.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, there's a couple times I'm like kind of like spacing out, like I don't know where I'm going with this, but
I usually play a lot more music.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I like that you know all the times and dates and facts and figures and you know the history. You know, it's
I lived it.
Yeah. That's great, because like I'm sitting here learning while like at the same time I'm trying to speak into the mic and say something meaningful.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot from you right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's something you don't forget when you've been talking. I mean, you know how much energy you put into the mic, right?
Yeah.
You remember things when you're interviewing people. And then, you know, I've been blessed in being able to be surrounded by people like Paulo Lefebvre and, you know, Bill Wapipa and you know, Billy and Vernon Catasciano and, you know, and now you youngsters are coming up, and we need the energy to continue on to the next generation.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so not young anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm 44.
Okay.
I feel like just yesterday I was 16.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were.
Yeah. So those two stories I just shared about those two elders and their
Yeah.
upbringing, I didn't want to say it, but that's my grandparents. That's what they went through. My grandpa Charlie and my grandma Nellie.
So, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's
Mhm.
been a real joy and a pleasure to listen to your thoughts, to
Mhm.
listen to your family stories,
Mm-hmm.
to listen to the information about what it's like to grow up in an activist community
Mm-hmm.
like the Bay Area is. And we just have a very few minutes, and you said that you would like to share a song with us.
Yeah. I just want to say that I'm very honored and very blessed to be able to share this space with you this evening. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak my mind on these things. I hope that it inspires conversation and action on the parts of people who hear and understand the message. And yeah, I'd be honored to share a song. I want to acknowledge my Lakota relatives right now, for sharing this song with me in the first place. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and Wakataka Shemalaye Waneta Chale Chamo Heya Heya Hai Way Haya Ho Way Haya Heya Heya Hai Way Haya Ho Way Haya Heyo Ho Heyo Hey Hey Yo Wakataka Shemalaye Waneta Chale Chamo Heya Heya Hai Way Haya Ho Way Haya Heya Heya Hai Way Haya Ho Way Haya Heyo Ho Heyo Hey Hey Yo Hajana Hashli Hajana Hashli, Hajana Hashli, Hajana Hashli, Itakayase. Thank you.
Thank you. I have heard that one before. Powerful, powerful song. And we send that out as a prayer for the folks that are protecting the Pipestone quarries. We're going to close this evening with a song from the Family CD by Randy Wood. And this one is, if I can read it, In the Old Days. Because we've sort of been talking about what it's like to be living in the old days.
Yeah, I feel like all my earliest memories are in the old days now. I'm getting up there.
Got a ways to go, bro.
Yeah. I hope so. A long ways to go.
Eagle call your name. Listen to the coyote call your fame. Listen to your brother, the wolf, whisper in your ear. Have no fear, little brother, I got your back.
So I think that's it, huh? That's a wrap.
Yep.
Woo!
The big bad wolf is
Yeah.
here and I got your
Well, you know,
back.
Isn't it? There's something powerful about radio, and there's an electricity to it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a rhythm and flow to it too.
Yeah.
Like I had drawn up some notes earlier, you know, but I'm glad I did because it kind of set it in my head. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna talk about.
Yeah.
But you know, them being all the way over here, I just kind of like, oh man, I can't even see that far. I didn't even bring my glasses in here. But you know, and then it's just like, you know, you got to kind of go with the conversation where it is. You can't like, oh, okay, yeah, you're talking about this, but I'm gonna start reading from my notes now. It's like, no, it has to be a organic conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to your brother, the wolf, whisper in